Hello, everyone, and welcome to Presentation Sales, the top 10 money spinners. And this is where we are talking about all those wonderful things that will help you sell your home as quickly as possible and for top dollar. So with that, I'm going to send it over to Tracy, as she's ahead of all these things. Hey there, Tracy, how you doing?
Good morning, Bobby. I'm very well, thank you. And it's Tracy McLeod from Australia. I am here on the Gold Coast.
I'm going to send it over to Tracy, as she's ahead of all these things. Hey there, Tracy, how you doing? Why are we hearing feedback?
Very well, thank you. Is anyone getting? Have you got it on your?
Yeah, a lot of people coming through.
Do you have? Okay, somehow it's in a loop somewhere. So I've got my phone. I'm going to turn my phone totally off.
It's not on my phone.
My phone is totally dead. Do you have? Okay, somehow it's in a loop somewhere. So we're live on YouTube at the moment. So does somebody have YouTube open?
I think it was me. I think it opens up automatically. I just couldn't find it with all the other stuff. My apologies.
Thank goodness for editing.
Yeah, I'll be there. That's why post-production is so good to us.
Yes.
Good morning. Good morning, Doug Hart. It's so lovely to see you this morning.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning to you, and good morning to Bobby as well.
Hi, Doug. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How long have you been painting for, Doug?
31 years now.
Wow.
What did you say?
31 years.
Wow. I don't know that I've done anything that long. So you're like an expert, right?
Very much so, yes.
Then you're the man.
I think Bobby's been married 32 years, Doug, but have you, Bobby?
Oh my God. Can't let my husband see this. 32. It'll be 33 this year. So yes. So yes, I have done something that long, but yes.
Okay. Yeah. So started as a boy, Doug. Started out of school?
No. I started in my early 20s.
Okay. Great. And tell us a bit about your colourful history with painting colour.
Well, I started over in London by accident, actually. I'd gone over on a world trip, as most of young people from our countries do, and I got asked to go and do some temp work for a building company, and they put me in to just start doing some sanding and prepping of stuff for them to paint. And the foreman turned around and said, "This guy's got aptitude. He knows how to do things." And they asked me to become a painter.
Wow.
Great.
That's fantastic. So getting a start in London, that's a really significant aspect of your painting career, isn't it? Because, you know, very different architecture, a lot of history, a lot of things to be aware of, I guess.
Well, that's it. Over there, people still rely very much on keeping their houses or back then, they kept them very much in the heritage likes, and a lot of the work, preparation and detail of getting things correct and back to what they used to be when the houses were originally built.
Got it. So a lot of lead paints, a lot of different type of products that were part of the original build, I guess.
Yes, and very ornate work as well.
Okay.
All scrolled cornices and ceiling roses, ornate architraves around doors and frames, the doors having carved panels in them, very big skirtings, mostly solid plastered walls, so very different to the techniques we use today.
Okay, wow. And that's where you had got your love of wallpaper, wasn't it?
Oh, definitely. Very much, yes.
He's wallpapering Australia, one man at a time, Bobby.
So you really do a lot of wallpapering, or is that a joke? Because I have a lot of painters who don't like wallpaper because they have to take it off and it's not been done right.
Doug loves it.
No, I've always enjoyed wallpapering because you can get such different results with wallpaper as compared with paint. Paint gives a plain finish. Wallpaper gives a very distinct finish, and there's millions of designs of paper these days.
This is true. This is true.
Yeah, and the big thing is, up until probably the mid-'80s, papering was common here in Australia, but not as common as in New Zealand, where I'm from, or England, where it's still reasonably popular. But it's coming back now, in particular for feature walls, in a huge way.
So we are three nations here today, Bobby. We've
that's
got
good.
Doug from New Zealand, myself from Australia, and you from the US. So quite amazing. Hey, Doug, tell us about taking wallpaper off in a home for sale. What sort of things should people be aware of if they have papered walls? And I do have one interesting incident where I had a heritage home and I suggested that they remove the paper or paint over it. And he said, I think that paper's from like 1880. And I thought, I'm not going to say anything. You know, leave the paper.
Yeah, when it comes to removing wallpaper, it can be very difficult at times, particularly if it's a very old wallpaper or it's been painted over, etc. Because the harder, the more well stuck the paper is to the wall, the harder it is to get it off. And if it's been painted over in particular, you've got to scour the surface before you start soaking the paper. It can take sometimes hours and hours to strip one small wall.
Yes. Those are the horror stories my clients will tell me when the walls haven't been prepared properly. So my question, and I've always wanted to ask someone this question, if you have wallpaper and you know that it was not properly sized behind it, so it's not going to be a relatively easy removal, is it best just to go ahead and paint over it or not? It
just depends. If the paper is lifting in places, it's better to take it off. If it is well stuck down and not got any or only a few small areas of lifting on the paper, just go and patch over it, patch up the seams where you'll see them obvious when you paint. Just patch them, sand them, seal the wall over, and then paint it. That's not too bad.
Okay.
And you can get some quite clean results. One of the things that we used to do before painting walls was we actually used to line the walls with lining paper before painting.
Really?
Yeah.
And so what was that over plaster walls or what was that?
Over plaster walls, over gyprock walls, just depended on the finish that the client wanted on the wall.
Wow, I learned something new today. Okay, I'd never heard of that before. So maybe that's an exotic New Zealand or England thing.
No.
It's okay. Embrace being exotic. That's what I was saying. My whole goal is to go somewhere to be exotic. So just embrace that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why Doug came to Australia. So he could be exotic.
There you go.
So Doug, excuse me, tell us about painting and walls for sale because you know, as you know, it's one of the top 10 home improvement money spinners, and as Bobby says all of the time. What do you say all of the time, Bobby?
I say paint is money in a can. Yes.
Very definitely.
What's that?
Very, very definitely.
Yeah, and in fact, most of the time, very, very rarely do I not recommend some level of painting to my clients. If there's a time stamp on the color palette, and they have the budget to do so, I will recommend, you know, the new colors, etc. But I have seen in house after house. I had one house I went in. It was originally listed at $849,000. And when I walked into the house, it was like crayons had exploded throughout the house. It was all kinds of different colors. And so I said to them, I said, you know, I'll talk to you about, you know, where to put the furniture, etc. But number one recommendation is going to be that you paint. And they said, absolutely not. We're not going to do it. It's going to cost, I think it was $17,000 to keep the house. So I encouraged them to, because I figured that's my job, you know, let them make an educated decision. So they decided against it. I staged the house. We rearranged the furniture that was there, etc. The house sat on the market, didn't sell. Well, they moved to their new home, and then the house was vacant. So they called me to come do vacant stage it, bring the furniture in and things. I walked through the front door, and they still had not painted. So I said, do not hire me to stage your house. Use that money towards painting. And again, they said no. So I staged the holy tar out of that house. It looked fabulous, considering it still looked like crayons had exploded throughout the house. In the end, it took, I think it was almost 4 years to sell. When it originally listed at $845 or $849, which was a great pricing, that realtor knew her numbers inside and out. That was the right price. Eventually it sold for $600,000. So that not painting, they lost truly $249,000 worth of valuation. So I use that example all the time because oy vey, oh my gosh, right? Yeah. So Doug, so you're the paint guy. I mean, I've got lots of questions. Tracy, what was your question?
Well, Doug, I was going to ask about, I mean, Bobby's example is quite a common one. Do you find it a fair bit when people, you know, they don't want to paint, or they're reluctant to spend the dollars when they're selling?
Or it's they're reluctant to spend the dollars. They think that they're not going to see the value of spending the dollars to get the money back. But because they see they've got to make an upfront payment and they're not going to recoup anything until they sell, and they're scared that even if they spend the money, they're not going to get it back. My recommendation always is to paint, because I have seen it where for an outlay of usually between 1.5% and 2% the value of the property, you painting and decorating the house, you will make between 10 and 15% more on your selling price.
Wow.
And that is common.
We know that, don't we, Bobby?
I've got exact examples of that, Bobby. You talked about a house, $980,000. A friend of mine had a house. She was involved in a divorce and had to sell the house, and she wanted to get $670,000, I think it was, for the house. She was advised by the real estate, you have to paint. I went and gave them a quote to paint the house. They were going to spend, I think, about $5,000 to tidy up the areas that absolutely had to be fixed up. Decided, no, we're not going to do it. They went on the market. Their top offer that they got at the time when they went on the market was $580,000. They were advised by the real estate agent, in this condition, this is the best offer I can get you. I've got a buyer who will pay this. They rejected the offer. They ended up selling it about 6 months later for $520,000. So for the outlay of $6,000, they lost $20,000 to $30,000 on $50,000 to $60,000 on what they'd been offered before, which was what they were asking.
Yeah. And I have a similar story, seeing as we're all trading painting war stories. where we had some potential clients. They had a number of coloured walls in the home. So it wasn't even painting the whole home. It was really just painting out these coloured walls and doing some staging, obviously. They decided to do their own staging and not change the coloured walls because, as we've heard hundreds of times, Bobby, I love my wall. Why wouldn't anyone else love it, you know, the way that I do? So but they went to auction. Their house was, they had two bidders at auction, and their house, and they decided not to sell. So then they got rid of their real estate agent, found another agent, and 2 months later, they sold for $70,000 less than the highest offer at auction, not having done any of the work, you know. So they lost a lot of money by doing that. And it was really, you know, it's a sad story, and we get to see it, and people don't even know that they're doing it, do they, Doug?
Oh, definitely they don't know it. Understand. Doesn't matter how many times you tell them, this will make you money. They just don't get it. That to make money, you've got to spend money.
We'll have to start our own reality show. Reality. And
oh my goodness.
Now, Bobby, you had lots of questions for Doug.
I do. I'm a questionaholic. So if I get too pushy, Doug, let me know. Can't help myself. I'm totally into paint. Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, good. So first off, when I am talking to a client about painting their home for sale, I generally recommend that they paint their walls with flat paint so that it doesn't show up a lot of the flaws, you know, the imperfections in the walls, and then semi-gloss on the moldings. Now my question, my question is this. One of the reasons I tell them this as well is my understanding is that the flat paint will, you can touch it up easier. It doesn't leave, I call them room measles. You know how when they come in and paint and you can see where they've touched it up? But my understanding is with flat paint, that doesn't happen. So can you clear that up for me between the flat and the eggshell or satin?
It's true. It is easier to touch up flat or matte paint because of the low sheen level.
Okay.
But the problem that I always have with people putting flat paint in particular, not matte, but flat paint on the walls, is flat paint marks easier.
Okay.
The new technology in paints is coming out where the matte paints, which have a very slightly higher sheen level than a flat paint, and the technology is not the way they used to make the old flat paints. It hasn't got little pointed bits diffusing the light. It's more spherical particles in the paint to diffuse the light, so it doesn't burnish over when you wipe it as well. That's another reason I don't recommend flat paint for walls, because if you wipe it, you're smoothing the wall over and you'll end up with a shiny patch.
So you're like the Mr. Science paint guy, because, okay, I just learned something new. So what you're telling me is that flat paint, when it dries on the wall, it makes little points.
That's the shape of the particles in the flat paint. They're not round. They're all sorts of different shapes, and they've got usually sharper points on them.
So it's almost like rubbing velvet. It's like taking and trying to rub velvet. You're going to notice it.
Yes.
Okay. So then now matte paint, I'm showing my ignorance. Matte paint, is that less sheen than like an eggshell?
Yes. Yes.
I am so checking this out. I don't know if it's here in the States. I'll have to find out. Americans, I'll let you know. Okay, go ahead.
See, flat paint has a sheen between 0 and 1%.
Okay.
Matte paint has a sheen level between 1 and 3%.
Okay.
And then you've got your low sheens, which are between 3 and 5%.
Okay.
your satin to eggshell paints, which are between 5 and 10 to 15%.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to see if we have all those different levels here, because if so, I'm going to become the paint expert. I'm going to channel you, Doug. Okay. So then, so let's say the house is not for sale, though, because we do have folks who watch us that aren't selling their home. What rooms would you generally recommend they do use flat paint in?
Down hallways.
Okay.
People think, oh, yeah, but hallways get a lot of traffic.
Okay.
But they've got low light levels.
Okay.
So it's just one of those things where, you know, as long as people don't put their hands on walls, it's fine.
Okay.
Another thing is quite often a softer featured wall it looks nice with a flat paint as opposed to a sheen level paint.
Okay.
Because it just gives a softer effect to the paint. It doesn't make it really hard edged. Gotcha.
So then now I'm looking, I'm speaking American here, because generally we have the flat and then it jumps up to the eggshell or a satin finish. So just based on what I know, the satin and eggshell, what rooms would you recommend those for?
Definitely for in the bathrooms, kitchen, where you've got to do a lot more cleaning.
Okay.
Laundry, wet areas.
Okay.
Because of the moisture, flat paint absorbs moisture.
Okay.
If you've got a sheen on it, it doesn't absorb the moisture as much, so you don't have problems with mold.
I'm getting you there. So I also see it looks like the walls are streaked, like the walls have been sweating, right?
Yes.
Okay, so, but that won't happen with like a satin or an eggshell, is that correct?
Well, you'll still get a little bit of streaking because the water will leave a mark, but it's easier to clean it off.
Perfect. Okay, so now we're going into the big guns, okay? Because here we got a lot of trim. And so there's the semi-gloss versus high gloss. Do you have a recommendation of one or the other for trim and cabinets, or is that just personal taste, or how's that work?
It is personal taste, but the smoother the surface, the higher the gloss level you can put on it. If you've got an old house with lots of little marks and that on your surface, you don't want a gloss because it will accentuate all those marks. So that's when you go with a semi-gloss. Gotcha. And I always recommend to people when they're repainting to go with a semi-gloss because of that reason.
That makes sense.
On new builds, nice flat surfaces haven't been damaged yet, fine, put your gloss on. Mm-hmm. But it's personal choice. A lot of people prefer to have gloss on their trim. They like the shiny look.
Okay. So then when we get into that too, here I know we talk a lot about latex or oil.
Latex, water-based.
Okay, water-based. So is there a benefit really for using oil-based paint?
Durability. It dries a lot harder.
Okay.
It takes minor knocks a lot better. But from a environmental point, water-based is far better. From a safety point, in particular for the painter, water-based is better. It's not as toxic. And also from the environmental view, people are becoming more and more aware of toxins. Mm-hmm. I recommend that they go with water-based and the low volatile VOC, which is volatile organic compounds materials.
That's perfect. So now you're getting all sciencey again. So Tracy, I was just wondering, when you're working with your clients, do you make any particular recommendation about the paint finishes for selling versus living? Any different recommendations?
I make the finishes I do talk about that. I'm sorry, I can't find myself. I'll just talk amongst yourselves for a moment, Bobby, while I just hid myself because
Okay.
I had to invite someone to join us.
Okay, you got it. You got it.
So,
Well, let's see. So, and then this is another thing. I told you I got a whole long list, Doug. So sit back and get comfortable. So my question is, we've got, different brands of paint out here, as you guys do too. And my question is this: so many times I have clients who there's one particular brand that I recommend to my clients, but it's not an inexpensive paint. So what they will do is they'll go to a discount store and a paint store and have them match it, color match, and then they use that lower quality paint on the walls. Well, not lower. Well, I don't know if it's lower quality. That's what I'm asking you. I mean, is there a difference? Is it true you get what you pay for, or does it? Somebody told me about little dots. Like it's how many microns or something in the paint is what. See, I'm trying to get sciencey on you. So
it is to do with the quality of the paint. The thing with the better quality paints, they have a higher volume solids rate, as well as being made out of better quality material.
So does it take, I'm sorry. So the lower quality paint, does it take more coats of paint to get the same job done?
No, usually the better the quality paint, the less paint you'll use.
Okay. Okay, so that could be money savings, because what a room that might have taken a gallon might take you 2 gallons of the inexpensive item, right?
Absolutely. A classic example is painting like over here is a lot of new build work, and to cut their costs, they'll go with the cheaper quality paints and everything like that. And not actually that I work in that industry, but I know that other painters have turned around and switched to using good quality paint because they're finding that for the same amount of money spent on the good quality paint, they use a lot less paint.
And less man hours.
Less man hours as a result.
Yeah. Always got to check the shape of the money. So now, do you, as far as quality of the paint job, is there a difference really between spraying the paint and rolling the paint? Is there really a difference?
Yes. When you spray the surface, you're making a perfectly clean finish. It's a very even finish, and the finish is so fine that you can't touch it up. When you roll the surface, you can touch it up because it's got a more textured surface finish on it.
Interesting. I had not thought of that. I think you're kind of brilliant. Okay, because I hadn't thought about that. But so when they spray it on, it's like so perfect, any touch-up shows. But when you roll it on or brush it on, the imperfections are actually the perfection of that paint, right?
Yes.
And do you spray a lot, Bobby, in your area? Do they spray a lot?
Well, it just depends. Many times builders, what they will do is they will go in and they will spray the walls. So they'll just spray everything. They cover up whatever, and it's because it's faster. Yeah. And many times just the comments I get back is, oh, we never spray, we only roll. So I've wondered, is there a difference as far as true quality of what you get on the other side? So, yeah. So now I'm which would you rather? What would you recommend, Doug? Like if we came and painted your house, would you say, oh no, you spray only or you roll only? What would you do?
Well, it depends on how you're doing it. I use a spray gun. Okay. But with the spraying, I always back roll, which is I just roll to the surface after I've sprayed while the paint's to put a texture on it.
I gotcha. That makes sense. Okay, that makes sense because see, when I lived in Colorado and California, and I think even Florida, All of the walls have textures, and different parts of our country have different amounts of texture. Like Colorado, they almost put it on. It almost looks like cottage cheese on the walls, and then they break it all down after it starts to harden. They surface the walls like that. When I moved here to North Carolina, I walked into the houses. The walls are perfectly smooth. There is no texture, and I remember thinking to myself, aren't they going to come in and finish this house? Because it just wasn't what I was used to. Now that I'm used to it, when I go back to different parts of the country, I'm fascinated with all the texture on the walls.
Yeah, that's thing happens, but it also comes down to what sort of rollers you're using. The denser the roller is, the finer the texture on the wall.
So say that again.
The denser tile on the roller, finer the texture. We have many different quality types of sleeves. We have lamb's wool sleeves, which we use, which put quite a lot of texture on a wall or a ceiling. Then we go down to your what are they? Unifiber sleeves, which are a much denser fiber, but they're not as dense as the highest quality fibers. So you'll still get a medium level texture with them. And it also depends on the length of the pile that you're putting it on with as well. And then you've got Dacron sleeves, which are older technology, but they can give a very good smooth finish.
Okay.
And then you've got the new technology sleeves, which is the microfiber sleeves.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Give a very, very smooth finish.
Okay, so for the just a regular wall, what nap would you recommend for a roller?
On the walls,
have
usually a 12 to 15 mil nap.
Okay. See, now for people who are paying attention, you get your note paper out and you write that stuff down, okay?